Chair recognizes Chairman Caldwell to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen. I present to you House Bill 515. This is a House bill that was brought to the legislative and congressional reapportionment. This was at a request of 8 of 9 representatives that have been affected by this concerning their recommendation and request. Let's talk about some of the things this bill does and some of the things that this bill does not do. Yeah, it does not do. This measure ensures, of course, common community interest and protected a number of districts across the metro Atlanta area. This is a routine minor redistricting that's done fairly often and was done last year and the year before in this House. It's not something that's unspecified. We will have a mandatory redistricting in 3 years from now when the new census is done, and these minor changes have to use the 2010 census by law, and that's what was used. There's 3 of the 4 changes between the districts represent only Republicans. One of the requests is between and concerns 1 Republican and 1 Democrat. And of that, concerning the Republican, it has to do with 2 precincts that he already had a portion of. In relation to the Democrat individual, it concerned 6 portions of precincts she already had some of, and now she has all of 1 and the majority of 4 and about half of the other. There was a resolution passed in this House in 2005, well before I came here, that was passed by this House of Representatives, and is, to my understanding, is still in effect. And what that resolution basically said was that in redistricting, and particularly in interim redistricting, that these are some of the conditions that should be followed but are not mandatory. And that is that all districts should comply, of course, with the United States Constitution. That is mandatory. That all districts, as best as they could be, to be compact in form, follow delineated lines of demarcation, meaning streets, subdivisions, and things of that nature, if at all possible. Community of interest, and may be defined in various ways, including but not limited to economic, social, cultural factors, governmental services, and location, and that no district should be established with an intent of diluting the voting strength of any person. Consent by the individuals are not in this resolution and is not required by law. As the chairman of this committee, the Speaker gave me certain things authorities that I could do, and I specifically asked him when he asked me to chair this committee, was that if there were any type of interim changes of precincts and districts, that I could use a formula that I thought was appropriate. And that is, number 1, hopefully there would be consent by people that were affected. And number 2, if there was not consent by the people that were affected, that the person or people being affected could not be hurt by their population and voting strength. Like I say, that is not a requirement, and it is not in concerning the resolution that was passed by this House, but that was a decision that I asked to be a part of in any redistricting in an interim time. That was taken into consideration in concerning these changes. There are changes concerning this, and I will name the districts and the people that are involved because everybody already knows it anyway. Representative Burt Reeves, Representative Ed Seltzler, and Representative Earl Earhart all joined in a contiguous one with another and requested a small change in precincts in their districts. Representative Jan Jones and Representative Chuck Martin likewise have contiguous districts, and they requested a small change in their districts. Representative Karen Mathiak and Representative Brian Strickland likewise requested minor changes in their districts. Most particularly in this instance, Representative Strickland picked up his hometown that he was born and raised in, but did not represent. The other districts had to do with Representative Rich Golick and Representative Sheila Jones, which is Districts 40 and 53 that are in Cobb and Fulton counties. These are the districts that I know that has caused so much problem and concern with members of this House. And there has been a great deal of misinformation, in my opinion, about what has gone on. But I can assure you that there has been no sinister act, nothing underhanded has come about, and that people have been notified and were aware of this bill and the process that was going to happen with it. And when it was going to committee, which was fairly noticed that it should have been, and that the people that were involved in any of these decisions were notified prior to the bill even being submitted, and once the bill was submitted, getting a copy of the bill as well as the maps. I know that there are going to be a great deal of questions concerning this. Before this bill was filed, the leadership of this House, particularly Speaker Ralston, met with Leader Abrams. I personally had Leader Abrams I didn't personally deliver it to her, but I had delivered to her a copy of the bill the day before this bill was even introduced. The next day, I checked with the legislative and congressional office that draws the maps and asked if, in fact, she had picked up copies of the maps, and they said no, so I had those taken and given to her. Of course, that office is open to anybody to get any maps anytime they want. It's your office, not my office. And I would personally say that the majority caucus, as well as I can only speak for myself, has tried to be as open and forthcoming as I know how to be in this process. That is the bill, Mr. Speaker, and of the individual that seems to be that there's a problem with, Ms. Jones's precinct or her district. It affects 2 precincts that she used to have under the current map, 6 that she presently has, and it gives her all of one of those under the change, portions of the other 4, greater portions, almost majority of it, and then about half of the 6th one of those that are affected. It also does not dilute anybody's population of voting strength. And I would ask, Mr. Speaker, that this House vote and pass House Bill 515.
Do you yield for questions?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I know there are a lot of questions, and I'll take a few.
Chair recognizes Representative Dukes to your left for a question.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Representative, when did all of this activity, I'm very concerned because we're here at Crossover Day, and I'm concerned as to when did all of this activity began as far as I
can only tell you concerning me. I can't tell you about anybody else. I began to hear about this bill and a request of these individuals about 2 weeks ago. I told those individuals that were requesting any type of change, number one, to talk between themselves and amongst themselves and see if they could reach some type of consensus if they wanted it done. I was then, only this past week, was when I received the information concerning those that were consenting and the one then district or 2 individuals involved that were not. And the bill was drawn this past week and dropped. That's all I can tell you, Representative.
Thank you. Would the gentleman further yield?
Yes, sir, for one more.
Yes, sir. Mr. Representative, what gives me the gravest concern?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What gives me the gravest concern is that, is it not true that at any moment we have established a criteria for redistricting during the off-season? But while it is merely a criteria, it is nothing that bounds us by that. Is that not true?
Nothing binds us to do it. We do not have to do it. We may if we want to. We're only required every 10 years. But we are not required to do it. But it has been done. It's been done since I've been here, and this is just my 5th year. And that's the only way I can answer you.
Would the gentleman further yield?
One more.
Do you think that out of the issue of fairness, that I could go home today and tomorrow, me or any other member in this body, that our districts could be redefined coming up to the next election cycle? And my question is do you think that is fair to me without my consent?
Well, you can drop a bill. Anybody else could drop a bill. And as I told you, my rule was if it wasn't consent, it could not hurt the other person by diluting their population of voting strength. I can't tell you about anybody else.
Thank you.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chair recognizes Representative Sheila Jones to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. I stand in opposition of House Bill 515, which changes the lines of the district that I represent, House District 53, which includes portions of Fulton County and Cobb County. These changes have come about without my consent or without consulting me. I did not know about this bill and what was being done at all. This bill was introduced at the 11th hour without the courtesy of informing me what is going on within the district that I represent. I'm the only Democratic member affected by the change in this bill. Regardless of the party, notice is fair and customary. Although Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act may not be in operation, its spirit should be upheld. I am also concerned that public comment was not permitted during the committee debate. I've been serving in the House of Representatives for 12 years, and this is the first time that I have seen this to happen. A few years ago, my district was tweaked. Some voters were moved around, but the other representative and I talked about the bill at that time. We came together, and yes, reapportionment was contacted and involved. As legislators, we must all commit to a fair and transparent process, both with our colleagues under the Gold Dome and with our constituents. We must never lose sight of the voters or diminish their voice or the power of their vote. Again, I stand in opposition of House Bill 515. And last, I will say the map that was going around, I only saw the map because I went to the committee hearing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield the well.
Lady has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. There is a minority report, and the chair recognizes Representative Dreyer to deliver the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to House Bill 515 today, and I do want to be clear. My objection is with the process through which we draw the lines, not my colleagues whose districts are involved, for whom I have a great deal of respect. And I know both parties have engaged in gerrymandering, but I pledge to you today, if a different party is in control of this chamber, I will do the same thing then as I'll do now. I'll walk down here and I will say, voters should pick the elected officials. Elected officials should not pick their voters. And right now, the Supreme Court is looking at two different avenues of gerrymandering, which are both going to be implicated in what's happening in House Bill 515. The first is going to be a challenge for racial gerrymandering. Over 1,500 minority voters are shifting to District 53, taking that district from a 60% minority district to an almost 65% minority district, and making a similar reverse change in the adjoining district. Those things, of course, have to happen both ways. And as an aside, 55% minority participation is traditionally used to qualify as a majority minority district, and going so far above that to almost 65% here will result in a challenge. To be clear, packing voters in one district means dilution in the other district. These are exactly the kind of changes that led the Supreme Court to review maps in recent cases out of Virginia and North Carolina. Aside from racial gerrymandering, this also smacks of partisan gerrymandering, because our data reveals that these districts that are being effective, particularly two of them, 40 and 111, are trending Democratic. That led to challenges in Wisconsin, which was successful, and Maryland, where they are scheduled to go to trial. As part of that process, the lawmakers and the map drawers have been deposed, and there will be a federal trial that the state of Maryland has to pay for. We can spare Georgia that outcome. And in Maryland, I'll concede, it was Democrats that did it there. But I would say the same thing to them that I'm saying to you. Voters should pick their elected officials. Elected officials should not pick their voters. And I will yield the balance of my time to Representative David Wilkerson from Cobb County.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Oh, you balance the time. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Representative Wilkerson. Chair recognizes Representative Wilkerson for the balance of the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to my fellow David for yielding the time. I'm not feeling well, so I apologize if I start coughing. But I wanted to come down here today because I started getting calls about House Bill 515 the other day, and people wanted to know how this could be done, what they could do, who they could call. If anything, we saw it last November. People were tired of their elected officials not listening to them. This conversation should not be about who in this chamber is being impacted. It should be about the people that are at home that are back working after they voted last November. Now they're back working. They're not paying attention to what we're doing, and now we are here selecting who their representatives will be. From a personal standpoint, back in the early 2000s, around 2003, the same thing happened with a commission map in Cobb County. We basically took African Americans out of a commission district that was trending one way and pulled them all out and put them into another district and dispersed them. And so we could pack another district to keep it in control. We went through the courts, court kicked it back. This body, back then, redrew the same map, basically. Went back to the courts, went to the federal courts. Finally, our former Attorney General, former County Chairman, Sam Mullins, he said, let's comply with what the community wants. So we actually had to go through this long court case, get it kicked back, just so we can put the map back to where the voters had the opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice, who ended up being the first African American to ever represent Cobb County in the county commission. What we're doing today is not necessarily electing the first African American or doing anything. What we're doing today, though, is saying that we do not trust the voters to do what they think we want them to do. And we shouldn't. We should be out there working hard every day. We shouldn't be in here redrawing maps every year just because we can. What you can and what you should are not necessarily the same thing. So what I'm asking today is that we put the process back in the hands of the people, that we allow people to be elected and not selected, and I ask that you vote no on House Bill 515. Thank you. I yield the will.
Gentleman has yielded the will. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 515 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so,